This is an Audio-Technica LP120 turntable. It's a fairly standard turntable. It has a cartridge with a diamond stylus that traces the grooves of a record to reproduce the sound information contained therein. And this is the ELP LT1LRC Laser Turntable. It uses a series of 5 lasers to track the grooves of a record to reproduce the sound information contained therein. There is no physical contact being made with the surface of the record that is being played. In this video, I'll be giving you a short history of the laser turntable, after which I'll show you how it works, to let you listen to a few sound clips taken directly from the turntable, and give you my honest opinion on it after having owned one for a year and a half. But before we do that, we kind of need to address the elephant in the room: audiophiles. You see, audiophiles have a well-earned reputation for being opinionated, to put it mildly, but they tend to reserve their most hyperbolic and venomous vitriol for the ELP turntable. I really can't think of another piece of audio equipment that so few have heard firsthand that yields such strong negative opinions.
Vinyl is a mechanical medium by design. The sounds are produced fresh each time by a tiny little magnet, getting those coils all excited like that, just like guitar strings over a pickup. This technology tries to get vinyl to play by the CD's rules: physically disconnected, optical.
The information extraction was at best about the level of a mid-fi turntable.
Unfortunately, the sound is not as good as a Technics 1200 with a Shure 97XE, a $500 setup. There is simply none of the analog bloom and presence, which is the reason why people still listen to LPs. The sound hangs dead in the speakers rather than forming a realistic soundstage.
I've heard needle drops done with one of these. They were quite unimpressive.
A 10K turntable will blow T8's thing out of the water. A 2K turntable will blow this out of the water.
I also can't think of another piece of audio equipment that has such complete misinformation associated with it.
I also didn't think it sounded anywhere near a 10K turntable. It was light, cheap plastic, and I think you might consider the very high price tag.
Okay. It's made of metal and weighs 42 pounds.
It also uses or used a DA converter, so it's digital really.
It is a 100% analog signal path. You can actually hear the acoustic sound that it produces if you put your ear up to it.
Hi, Future Jeff here. We need to be very quiet, but here, have a listen. There are no speakers connected at all. What you are hearing is the physical sound of the ELP Laser Turntable. Okay, back to the show.
Requires an extra $3,300 in accessories to function correctly.
Nope. Here's what you need. And my favorite?
Of course, you can only play the LP once, because the laser melts the vinyl as it reads the audio groove.
My goal for this video is to clear up some of these misconceptions and give you my opinions based upon actually, owning the thing. So, in the meantime, my name is Jeff.
Hi, Jeff.
I am a music addict, but enough about me. This is the ELP Laser Turntable. Now, the history of laser turntables isn't particularly well documented, but here's what we do know. Development began all the way back in 1972 by a gentleman named William K. Hine, who was awarded a patent for his work in November of 1976. His system was based off of a single laser, and it's unknown, or at least undocumented, if he was ever able to produce a functional prototype. In 1983, 2 Stanford electrical engineers, Rob Rees and Robert Stoddard, founded Finial Technology to expand upon Hine's designs and develop and market a laser turntable. It took another 3 years before the first working prototype was ready for public demonstration at the 1986 Consumer Electronics Show. Now, first-hand accounts from this show are kind of hard to come by, but it seems that people were generally put off by the fact that the laser picked up and amplified any bit of dust and debris on the surface of their records. I mean, after all, a laser can't brush aside tiny particles of dust like a stylus can. And I imagine that keeping records spotless and dust-free at an electronics show was a bit of a challenge back then. In the meantime, by 1986, compact discs were readily available and sales of CD players were booming. In that year alone, there were 2 million CD players sold, with some budget models going for as low as $150, or roughly $350 adjusted for inflation. As you can imagine, the appetite for dropping around $3,800, or nearly $9,000 in today's money, for a device that plays an antiquated media format that was nearing obsolescence, there just wasn't one. Finial liquidated their assets and sold their patents in late 1989. By the way, Rob Rees, he's still around. He was briefly a director in the Texas Instruments Innovation Center, and for the past 10 years has been president and CEO of Higher Ground, a, quote, disruptive innovator in satellite communications. For those of you playing BS Bingo at home, mark your disruptive and innovator squares now. Anyway, 8 years after the final demise of finial technology, try saying that 5 times fast, and over 20 years from when the first patent was filed, a small Japanese company named ELP, short for Edison Laser Player, brought the first laser turntable to market. The cost was a mere $20,500 US, or nearly $48,000 in today's dollars. A few different models have been introduced over the years, with the 2 most recent models, the LT Basic and the LT Master, being introduced in 2016. All of the models feature a system of 5 lasers. 2 beams aim at the left and right edges or shoulders of the groove for tracking. 2 beams read the actual sound waveform at a default depth of 10 microns below the shoulder. This depth can be adjusted, which we'll get to a little bit later on. Since records come in various thicknesses and have all sorts of marvelous imperfections and inconsistencies to them, the 5th beam runs just ahead of the other 4 beams to keep track of the height between the laser head and the record surface. This allows it to deal with warped records with up to 5 millimeters of deviation allowable. What are the advantages of this type of system? Well, the first is the most obvious. There's no stylus making physical contact with the record, so there's no risk of wear to your records. And no, the laser will not melt your vinyl. The lasers can be adjusted to read different parts of the groove. If one part of the groove has become damaged or excessively worn over the years, you can tweak the laser depth higher or lower to read a potentially undamaged or at least less damaged part of the groove. Since there are separate lasers for reading the left and right walls of the groove, stereo separation is darn near optimal. There's theoretically no sound coloration. There's no stylus, cantilever resonance, tone arm resonance, coils, magnets, or basically anything with mass to color the sound. Similarly, there's no possibility for acoustic feedback caused by the sound from your speakers or the vibration of the turntable getting re-amplified. You also don't need to bother with all the usual joys of setting up a traditional turntable. Aligning your cartridge, setting your vertical tracking angle, cleaning your stylus, adjusting and fine-tuning your speed using a strobe, and so on. Just none of that stuff exists in a laser turntable. So that's the good stuff. What's the bad stuff? Well, first, your records need to be spotless. I'm talking wet clean, distilled water rinse, vacuum dry clean. Every time. If you put your cleaned record back into its jacket, it is no longer clean. Every minute piece of dust in that jacket will contaminate your record and add unwanted pops to your listening experience. A maskless laser just simply can't do anything to brush aside dust. Secondly, this system can only play black, opaque records. Clear records or picture discs will prevent the lasers from reflecting light to their respective sensors, so those are a no-go. Third, service. If you want/need your unit serviced for any reason, you have exactly one choice. Send it to ELP in Japan. That's it. There are no regional service centers, and the service will cost you a pretty penny, as I'll show you later. Fourth, there's the other elephant in the room, the cost. Oh, hot dang, these things aren't cheap. The current pricing for the LT Master model is $18,000 US. Whoo boy. Now the question here is, do you actually get your money's worth? Well, let's get back to that question in a little while. Now, as for using the turntable, it's pretty simple. Just hit the open-close button to open up the tray, carefully plop your record onto the spindle, and hit the open-close button again to close it up. The ELP will then churn for a minute as it scans the record surface to see where the track markers are, determine the thickness of the record, detect any warps and other inconsistencies, and so on. My model plays back at 33 1/3 and 45 RPM, which can be tweaked as low as 30 RPM and as high as 50 RPM. It'll play back 12, 10, and 7-inch records. And for 45s with the larger hole in the middle like we have here in the US, you can use a standard adapter that you'd use on a traditional turntable to play those. As I mentioned before, the default laser depth is 10 microns. This can be tweaked using the ELP's Variable Scanner Offset System, or VSO. In my opinion, tweaking it to, there's a few settings. There's -1, there's 0, +1, and +2. Tweaking it to -1 almost always makes things worse, while tweaking it to +1 or +2 very often leads to positive results. Playback can be paused, fast-forwarded, rewound, and seek to head or back, all pretty much identically to a CD player. The controls are pretty responsive, although you may lose an input or two if you try to seek ahead too quickly. There's also a hover function that will continuously play a single groove segment for up to 2 minutes. I don't know how useful it is, but it's there. There's a built-in noise blanking system that I found does very little to actually blank noise. I've yet to hear it make a discernible difference between having it engaged and having it disengaged. There's also a whole bunch of track programming functions that I honestly find to be pretty useless. How many times have you found yourself wanting to change the playback order of a single LP side? For me, it's near 0. You can also repeat a side up to 99 times for the
ultimate test of anyone's sanity.
So now that you know about most of the unit's features, let's take a minute to actually listen to what this thing sounds like. This in and of itself is problematic for YouTube. You see, I can't play you anything that you're likely to recognize because the YouTube police will demonetize this video or take it down or give me a strike on my account or affect my credit rating, take my children. I don't know. Any number of horrible things could happen. Even the obscure stuff is a challenge. I picked out a nice obscure song to play for you guys, only to find out that someone had sampled the entire thing, rapped over it, and monetized that. So the original artist gets nothing, the lazy rapper profits. I digress. After a bunch of research, I settled on a clip from the track King Tut Strut by hyperventilating flautist Jeremy Steig from his album Temple of Birth. It features a killer groove from a killer band including Johnny Winter on guitar, Alphonse Mouzon on drums, and Anthony Jackson on bass. And yet, in spite of all that musical firepower, this LP has never seen a re-release in any format. It also doesn't appear to be on YouTube's naughty list, so hopefully it will be a perfect candidate for us here. My copy, obviously it's not a pristine copy. It has some scuffs and a few scratches here and there, so you'll get a pretty good idea for how the ELP deals with less than perfect vinyl. I haven't done anything to alter what you're about to hear. No declicking, no limiting, no EQ, none of the above. This is pretty much how it sounds straight out of the turntable, although keep in mind, YouTube will compress this audio, and it's naturally going to suck away some of the fidelity when it processes this video. There is turntables. So here's a couple more. The first is going to be some classical piano from Anthony Di Bonaventura, playing a snippet from one of Debussy's Etudes. This is on the Connoisseur Society label, which is really kind of notorious for having pretty lousy pressings and generally not the greatest recordings. But I'll let you guys decide for yourself what you think of this one. And then secondly is a snippet from In the Spanish Mode by Larry Coryell and the Brubeck brothers. This was a direct-to-disc Labs LP, so a very nice pressing in this case, but something, because it was recorded direct-to-disc, that has never been released on CD. So here you go. Now that you've heard the turntable, let's tackle some frequently asked questions in rapid-fire fashion. Can the ELP play both sides of an LP without a manual flip like certain Laserdisc players do? No, you need to flip the record. Does the ELP output a phono-level signal or a line-level signal? That's a great question. Mine outputs a line-level signal. Now this was a special order option for the first and second generation models, so the majority of the ones that were produced output a phono-level signal and require a separate phono preamp. Current gen models have both a phono and line out, which is pretty handy. How much should you pay for it? Yeah, I'm not going to tell you exactly. It was an eBay auction, and all I can say is that it was significantly less than new one. That said, it was sold as is with issues, and I'll explain more in just a minute. Why did you get a laser turntable when you could have spent the money on a high-end traditional turntable? That's another terrific question. Here's the thing, I've known about the ELP for around 20 years and I've always been absolutely fascinated by its technology. I love my vinyl, and the idea of a product that could play it back in such a pristine fashion without any physical contact, I don't know, it just resonates with me. I also have a strong affinity towards oddball products, and this is definitely clearly amongst the oddest of the oddballs. Have you had any problems with your laser turntable? Well, as I mentioned before, mine was sold as is on eBay with some known issues. The seller described it as having trouble with playback of less than perfect vinyl. This has actually not been my experience. I've had some great results with everything ranging from pristine vinyl to beat up beyond recognition vinyl and everything in between. However, my player is exhibiting two issues. The first is that certain frequencies cause the unit to distort. Certain hi-hat sounds and pretty much every tambourine sound will generally do it. And this is not like me being nitpicky. This is like, oh my gosh, good Lord, please stop assaulting my ears kind of a distortion. It's really bad. And number two, the alignment on the right channel seems to be slightly off. Sometimes out of nowhere, it'll start playing sound from an adjacent groove, leading to a very bizarre, time-shifting sort of thing. I can almost always fix it by moving the laser to a different position, but this is definitely not how it's supposed to behave by default. All this leads me to service. I contacted ELP support about these issues. They never responded to my message on Facebook, but they responded very quickly to my message on their website. I asked them if there were any trim pots for the internal preamp. They replied that no such thing on a laser turntable. I won't lie, this kind of gets my antenna up since there are over 20 variable resistors inside this thing, and I find it hard to believe that none of them applies to the preamp. So moving on, I provided them with a sound clip of my issue, and they went out of their way to track down the exact same pressing of the exact same LP, and they tested it on their in-house laser and traditional turntables to see if the problem was with my turntable or with the pressing. And they sent me MP3s of both of those rips, which I really appreciated. However, it should be mentioned that in their rips, the left and right channels were flipped on both of them. And for a company that touts the ultimate in audio experiences, this is pretty significant. So again, another thing that kind of got my antenna up. They then provided me with a very professional quote for the repair work, as well as additional quotes for upgrading my turntable to their current gen master audio quality and for trading in my unit for a completely new one. The cost, oh my goodness, it basically is what I paid for the turntable to begin with. So I won't be sending it to them anytime soon. Do you regret buying the laser turntable? No, I don't, and here's why. This was a long-term investment for me, and I'll eventually invest the money into getting it working 100%, most likely. In the meantime, it is an absolute pleasure listening to music on it. I've had it for a year and a half now, and I still marvel at how amazing it makes some LPs sound. Moreover, it's unique and certainly a conversation starter. And it brings me joy, and in these days, a little bit of joy can be what helps get me through the day. Can't really put a price tag on that, right? On that note, thank you very much for watching. If you like this video, please click the thumbs up button. Please consider subscribing and hitting that little bell icon to get notified when I go live with another video. If you didn't like this video, go ahead, click that thumbs down button, leave a snarky comment, and subscribe anyway, because that will give you the opportunity to click the thumbs down button and leave snarky comments on my other videos. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.